Right, so there isn't anything particularly unique about the way I go about making webcomics, about my process. But I decided to just make this video anyways because who knows, maybe there's something different here that might appeal to someone. And in any event, I'll have a video to point anyone to if they were asked like what kind of process I use for this year at least. So one of the very first things I do is I get to thumbnailing. Typically, I will make thumbnails for episodes maybe 2 episodes ahead of the current one that's published. That's like kind of how I do buffers. I don't really want to do them that way. I would kind of prefer to finish episodes like completely as a buffer, but after thumbnailing I'm usually extremely tired and then I don't ever look back at it until like maybe 2 days before I'm supposed to be updating. In fact, I actually wrote a script for this video, and while I was reading the script while also trying to multitask with this, I guess it was too much for my monkey brain to handle, and I think I'm just gonna do a lot better if I just go straight off the books and just read or just speak from like a journal stream of consciousness and whatever shows up on the video. Yeah, so after I've done all of the thumbnailing, I usually do panels first, or I'll do, like, there's no real order to it, I just do what I feel like. So here I'm doing panels first. It's a new layer and it's on multiply, and it's an assisted layer, except for if like the lines are really slant, but yeah, it's an assisted layer. And then after that, I'll add speed bubbles, but this layer mode goes above the panels layer and it's on normal and reference, so that I can just color drop white and fill in the speed bubbles as white. After I've finished adding all of the speech bubbles, and yeah, I do them by hand. Trust me, I don't want to be doing them by hand either. Procreate really is not the best drawing program to be doing comic creation in, but I plan to get Clip Studio Paint eventually. So yeah, after I finish with those bubbles, I start to do the actual liner, and gosh, just like watching this video of me painstakingly doing the perspective for this house that like on average you spend like 3 seconds looking at, it's really painful. Like, I'm never doing anything like this ever again. Like, besides the buffer episode that I've prepared already where I did the exact same thing again, because I did 2 in 1 sitting, don't ask why. I really want to just use 3D models next time. I plan to just use the Sims 4 because this was a bit too much, yeah. So I do the line art for this dumb house, and then I also do the line art for the light posts, for Ryu, who I can never seem to draw consistently, but we're getting there. I do more line art for for Jess, and once I'm finished with all of that, I begin making a layer underneath the line art. The line art's will multiply, of course. Make a layer underneath it, and I color in black and white, just like using the general values that I know the characters have. For example, Ryu has black hair, which I usually color as purple, so I make it dark gray, and Jess has platinum blonde hair, so his hair is very close to white. And the reason I'm coloring it all in grayscale is because I'm going to be adding a gradient map on top. And God help me, I wish there was an easier way to do this coloring, but I do the line art and the panels all on the same layer, which means that I can't make it a reference layer, which means that I can't like color drop things in. And you know, I've kind of just accepted the fact that if a dirt's a dirt, if there's gonna be colors or like if there's gonna be little bits of like color seeping out the line art over the line art and it looks really messy, so be it. I mean, nobody's going to drop a comic just because of that. So it's really not my number one priority. For this part, I decided to actually like actively use my brain while drawing for once, and it was like, oh, I forgot, you can like change the colors of the gutters. It doesn't have to be like plain white all the time. So I chose this moment to do like a cool transition to dusk, because it's night, and like Ryu was at a party first and now he's outside, even though it's always been night, but you get the gist. It's a change of pace. And in the final panel, we're doing a coloring thing of Ryu's sister at home. One thing I wish I could do with the lasso tool is if it could do rectangles in perspective as well, like slanted, but yeah, that's probably asking too much. Alright, so once I'm finished coloring in everything in black and white, I will make a gradient map out of it. And if you don't understand what a gradient map was before, this is a perfect time to see it in action. Basically, I used an existing gradient map in Procreate. I think it's called Neon, and then I tweaked a few things. I made the lightest color light teal and not white, and basically did it to a palette that I liked. And basically I plan to use this palette or this gradient map for like every single episode going forward, so everything's uniformed. Of course, like gradient maps can also be used to convey mood. So I use an especially like cool colored gradient map because it's nighttime and the colors are gonna be like very cool. But at the same time, there's also like pink in it because I like pink. That's it. There's no other reason. It's because I like pink. And once I'm finished with that, I do a few finishing touches, like I make an overlay layer, my favorite kind of layer mode, and I'll add, what's it called? Under touch-ups, I add the noise brush and do like a little grain effect. I also make an add layer and add some like little splotches of light, so not everything's all dark. Give it a sense of like some kind of three-dimensional action happening here. And I'm redoing the noise layer here for some reason, and I add like little bits of highlights to different parts just to make everything pop a little bit more. The brush I'm using here is a brush from a pack by Devanel Kurtz, I can't remember her last name, but if you would like to know where I get the brushes from, leave a comment and I'll drop the link to it, or you can look it up as well. So yeah, once I'm finished coloring all of this and doing like the finishing touches, I export this final PNG, or rather I airdrop it to my computer, and then I open it all in Medibang, and I have a recording of that too, so let me just drop it in very quickly. Right, so once I've exported everything to my computer, I open it in Medibang and I do the typesetting. That's what it's called, right? So the font I use is Anime. You can see it there, Anime Ace. There we go. It's a pretty legible font. I like it. It's pretty good. I don't use a separate font for like sound effects because I'm kind of lazy. I haven't looked into that too much, but I just use like the same font for everything. Oh, as you might have seen, like I swiped over to my Google Doc. Feel free to look at the mess that document is. Oh my gosh! But basically, I use that Google Doc like for my scripting, and it's like very rudimentary. Most of the time, it's disorganized. But yeah, I just copy the lines from that script and paste them here. Sometimes I'll change a few things, like if I didn't like how I phrase something, because dialogue is definitely a thing I kind of struggle with. One thing I've learned about like how I go about writing stories is that the voice, the authorial voice that I kind of write in is a lot more appealing than what the characters are actually saying and doing. It's kind of the writing style that makes my stories enjoyable and not necessarily what the characters themselves are saying or how they say it. So that's definitely like gonna have some conversion errors or like some translation errors when you're converting over to comics, because there's not really that much narration going on. It's mainly like what the characters are doing and how you portray that in the least possible words. So that's one thing I've had to struggle with. Here I am using some screen tones from Medibang because I was like, oh right, Medibang has this is a thing. and I like add a little like texture over the tree to kind of separate it from the house. And yeah, I'm finished, so I export it to my folder and we're done. I hope this was in some way informative. There's not really anything particularly different that I do, but who knows? Maybe someone will find this video interesting, and at the very least, I have this made now, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to, if I ever do a video similar to this, what things will have changed in my process and what things will remain the same. So without further ado, I guess, thank you for watching this, and if this helped you in any way or if you made anything to say, feel free to leave a comment. Okay, bye!